Most real-life spies. Number 10. Aldrich Ames. This guy might look somewhat unimposing, which is the point. Aldrich Ames was a CIA analyst that had one of the most damaging midlife crises in American history. Ames worked for the Soviet Union as a double agent. He compromised more US agents than anyone else in US history aside from one other person. For his efforts as an informant, Ames received a total of $4.6 million, and it wasn't until 1993, nearly 10 years since Ames first started spying for the Soviets and the Russians, that he was caught. During the time of his arrest, he passed 2 different polygraphs, which was previously thought impossible. What finally gave him away was his excessive spending of the money that he got, including a $540,000 house that he paid for in cash, a $5,000 Jaguar, and credit cards with limits that exceeded his monthly salary. Not something that an agent with a $60,000 yearly salary could afford. Today, he's serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Number 9. Robert Hanssen. This event has been called the worst intelligence disaster in US history, and that is including Benedict Arnold. As far as time goes, Robert Hanssen was one of the longest-serving Soviet and Russian moles. He transferred US intelligence to the Russians for a total of 22 years, from 1979 to 2001. After only 3 years with the FBI, Hanssen approached the Soviets to become a spy for them. During his time spying for the Russians, he exposed the most US agents in history. It's never officially been said just how much Hanssen gave them, but it's been said that it is a substantial amount, including FBI bugging activities and lists of suspected Soviet double agents. Even though he told the US government the only motivation for his espionage was money. He only made $1.4 million in a 22-year period. Hanssen was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms without parole in 2001. Number 8. Ian Fleming. This should come as a shock to no one, because who writes the greatest series of spy novels in the world without a little real-world experience? If you don't know who he is, Ian Fleming penned the James Bond series. And yes, there were books before movies. Ian Fleming was recruited to spy during World War II by the Director of Naval Intelligence. His primary job was devising ways to sabotage and disrupt enemy forces using operations like Operation Ruthless and Operation GoldenEye. Honestly, we're not kidding. He was also in charge of a team called 30 Assault Unit that had 138 spies and was everything that James Bond is. All he learned serving as a spy for the British government he carried into his books, even the name of one of his most famous operations. Number 7. Anna Chapman. This spy was a Russian citizen that also gained citizenship in Britain through her marriage. She wasn't a very effective spy, to say the least. They evidently don't make them like they used to. She was the ringleader of a group of spies that were dubbed the Illegals. They worked computer-based jobs, but they almost had no computer knowledge. They transferred information over open wireless networking, which made their activity absurdly easy to track. And they often forgot their computer passwords, so they had post-it notes with their passwords hanging out on their computers. And the people posing as IT experts had to send their computers to Moscow because they kept freezing. She even bought a cell phone and registered her street name as 99 Fake Street. She was arrested in 2010 and pled guilty to the charges. She was then deported back to Russia, and her UK citizenship was revoked. In the end, the US ended up gaining a lot of top-secret stolen information on their computers. She is now a Russian celebrity with a successful modeling and TV career. She also publicly proposed to Edward Snowden. Number 6. Tony Mendez. This spy is one of the more popularly known on the list thanks to the award-winning drama that was Argo. He was the real-life inspiration that made the balls-out crazy movie scheme work. Named the Canadian Caper, he helped some of the hostages escape during the Iran hostage crisis in 1980 when they posed as a Canadian film crew. Mendez retired from the CIA in 1990 and works full-time as an artist now. He's also written 3 books about his time in the CIA. Number 5. Duquesne Spy Ring. As far as spy cases go, this group was one of the biggest. The event of the Duquesne spy ring was one of the largest espionage cases in United States history that got convictions. A total of 33 spies were convicted, and the group was sentenced to a total of over 300 years in prison. The German spies took up prominent positions in America and gathered information for the Nazis. One of these posts was on the crew of the SS America, a United States Navy ship. On board, Franz Joseph Stiegler and Erwin Wilhelm Siegler gathered information about the military movements and defense strategies of the Allied forces. In total, these 2 particular agents were sentenced to 26 years in prison, 10 and 16 respectively. The SS America ran from 1940 before it crashed in 1994 on a beach in the Canary Islands. Number 4. Roald Dahl. The chances are that you're a fan of Roald Dahl even without knowing who he is. He wrote children's classics like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach, as well as BFG. What a lot of people still don't know is that he was a famous spy during World War II. He was originally a fighter pilot for the British Royal Air Force before he was forced to retire thanks to an injury. It didn't take long into retirement for him to charm his way into the wealthy circles of Washington, D.C., where he was living at the time. Because of his high standing, he was recruited by the British government to sleep with the wives of prominent men to gain information to help the British. The work that he did got America involved in the war, and it was writing war propaganda for American newspapers that made him realize his love of writing. Number 3. Oleg Gordevsky. Oleg Gordevsky is a high-ranking colonel of the KGB that ended up becoming a double agent for the British government. He joined the KGB in August of 1961 and started spying for the British government from 1974 to 1985. He's also one of the many reasons that we don't live in a nuclear wasteland right now. He was able to avert a nuclear confrontation between the two countries. When a mistake was made, the Soviets believed that America had made the first strike and planned to hit, but Gordevsky was able to convince them not to. The leak about what Gordevsky was doing came from Aldrich Ames, and it led him to be drugged and interrogated by his superiors. Fortunately, he was able to send a message to MI6, and they helped him escape to Finland and then to Britain. The Russians sentenced him to death, but they couldn't do anything about it because of his asylum in Britain. He was the highest-ranking KGB officer ever to defect. Number 2. Eddie Chapman. Nicknamed Zigzag by British Secret Service, this double agent that turned on the Nazis may be a little crazy. He offered his services to the Nazis as a spy during World War II and then became a British double agent. His criminal history before the spy thing is just as impressive. He had a strong taste for gambling and alcohol, which led him to become a safecracker for London gangs, and he was eventually arrested in Scotland when he was caught blowing up a safe. After he was released from the Scottish prison, he moved to Jersey, where Chapman tried to continue his criminal career. But when Chapman saw that officers were coming for him, he did what anybody who thinks that they're in an action movie would do: dive out of a closed window. When he was taken by the law for real this time, he was sent to a Nazi-occupied jail where he was recruited. Being British-born, he offered his services to spy for his home country if all of his crimes were pardoned and he got to keep any money that he made when serving the Nazis, because he still has to get paid, right? He even had an opportunity to kill Hitler once he got high up in the ranks, but the plan was vetoed by Winston Churchill. Number 1. Sir William Stevenson. Although the character of James Bond is a combination of a bunch of real-world spies, this one is considered to be the main inspiration. He was a big deal during World War I and World War II. Ian Fleming himself said that James Bond is a highly romanticized version of an actual spy. The real thing is William Stevenson. Along with Roald Dahl, he was a major influence in getting America involved in the war. He was sent by Churchill to establish a British spy ring in the US, but the organization ended up being a group that served MI5, MI6, SOE, or Special Operations Executive, and PWE, or Political Warfare Executive, all over North America, South America, and the Caribbean. He worked without salary and hired predominantly Canadian women to staff the organization. His help in the war made a significant difference, and among the many honors that he had a knighthood, a Medal of Merit from President Truman, who made him the second non-American to receive the award, and a statue in downtown Winnipeg.